All right, listeners, buckle up because tonight we've got a real-life whodunit on our hands.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, so we're diving deep into a case that went down at the Rosewood Theater during the final performance of a play called Crimson Veil.
Crimson Veil, huh?
Yeah,
Interesting choice for a title, I've got to say. It kind of hints at all the themes we're about to uncover, hidden truths, secrets, that sort of thing.
right. Totally sets the mood. And the characters involved are like straight out of a classic mystery novel. We've got Evelyn Grace, the legendary actress who was taking her final bow that night, except it turned into a rather permanent one.
And not just any exit, she collapses right there, center stage, mid-monologue.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that detail. Talk about a dramatic exit, huh?
Huh.
Makes you wonder if it was almost like she was scripted to die.
Oh, for sure. Well, we know this is real life, and a real crime was committed, and that's where our unique detective comes in. Arthur Hale, who also happens to be a playwright.
Not your typical detective, right?
Not at all. Having that background in playwriting gives him a different way of looking at things. He understands characters, motives, plot twists. So when he gets to the scene and sees how everything unfolded, the timing, the setting, it's like alarm bells start going off in his head. He knows this isn't just a random tragedy. There's a carefully crafted story here. A narrative.
And like any good story, there are clues. Right off the bat, Arthur discovers the poisoned wine, the murder weapon.
Classic.
But here's the catch. The wine was consumed during intermission.
So that means...
Exactly. The killer had to be someone who was already inside the theater. They're trapped in there with everyone else.
The classic closed circle mystery, nobody in, nobody out. The killer's right there sharing the stage with all the suspects.
Talk about a captive audience.
Yeah.
So let's get to those suspects, shall we? We've got Victor Bennett, Evelyn's co-star and, a former love interest.
Juicy.
Victor says he was just rehearsing lines in his dressing room during intermission. But,
Okay, but before we jump into alibis, let's rewind a bit and unpack Victor's character. Because there's definitely some history there. He's been playing second fiddle to Evelyn for years in their recent public argument. Can't ignore that.
right. Witnesses said he straight up blamed Evelyn for ruining his career. Plus, you've got that whole romantic past thing fueling the fire.
Exactly. So when you look at Victor's alibi, it's not just about where he was, but you got to consider what might have been going on in his head. Was he really just rehearsing lines, or was he maybe rehearsing a murder?
Okay, so good point. Now, moving on to our next suspect, Leela Drake, the understudy.
The understudy years of waiting in the wings watching Evelyn shine. That's got to create some tension, right?
You think? I mean, imagine all those years of pent-up ambition and frustration. Now, Leela says she was backstage during intermission dealing with costumes.
Sounds plausible, but also pretty convenient, wouldn't you say? It puts her close to everything, including, the prop room.
Where the poison was
Yeah.
found. Oh, yeah, I see what you're getting at. Okay, so now things start to get really interesting with Simon Caldwell. He's the director, and, well, let's just say he had a reputation for being a perfectionist.
Oh, and don't forget those rumored clashes with Evelyn over creative differences. She was known for having her own strong opinions, and Simon, well, he liked things done his way.
Right, and his alibi.
Right.
Well, he claims he was up in the balcony watching the audience during intermission.
Interesting. But wouldn't that also give him a perfect view of everything happening on stage? The dressing rooms, people coming and going.
Like he's pulling the strings from above.
Exactly. Like a puppet master. Okay, so last but certainly not least, we have Margot Lane, the stage manager. She's the one who actually admits to bringing Evelyn the poisoned wine, but insists she's totally innocent, the unwitting accomplice.
Maybe. But even if she wasn't directly involved, think about the access she had. She was seen near Evelyn's dressing room just before the show started.
So she could have been used, manipulated. And let's not forget, someone had to plant that poison in the prop room. Someone who knew their way around backstage.
Right. Someone who could slip in and out unnoticed.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you have it. We've got our suspects, our motives, and a whole lot of intrigue.
It's all tangled up, isn't it? Like a Shakespearean tragedy waiting to unfold.
I was going to say like a tangled up set of Christmas lights, but Shakespeare works too. So now that we've laid out the players and the stage is set, where do we go from here?
Well, Arthur's a smart guy. He knows that in a case like this, physical evidence is crucial.
Yeah.
And lucky for him, he stumbles upon a real game changer. Evelyn's script.
But not just any script, right?
Right. This is her annotated script full of notes and markings.
Yeah.
And there's one line in particular that stands out. The truth will be revealed tonight. It's underlined like over and over again. Almost eerie, don't you think?
For sure. I mean, almost like a premonition or something. But remember, Arthur's a playwright himself. He knows that lines can have double meanings, layers of subtext.
So it's not just a clue in the murder case, it's a clue about Evelyn herself.
Like she knew something was going to happen.
Exactly, and that she wasn't just waiting for the truth to come out, she was going to force it out. Which brings us to another piece of evidence that Arthur finds. A torn-up blackmail letter.
Oh, right. Just fragments.
Yeah.
But it's clear Evelyn was threatening to expose someone's secrets. The recipient's name is missing, though.
Interesting. Do you think that was intentional? Maybe a way to throw Arthur off the scent? Either way, it confirms that Evelyn wasn't just a victim in all of this. She was playing a dangerous game.
Talk about adding another layer to her character. Okay, so we've got suspects, motives, and some seriously cryptic clues. But the final piece of the puzzle, the thing that really seals the deal, is the discovery of the poison itself.
The cyanide, hidden in plain sight, right there in the prop room.
A vial with a scratched-off label, but the scent of almonds gives it away.
And this is where Arthur's experience as a playwright really comes in handy. He realizes that the hiding spot is too perfect. It had to be someone who knew the theater inside and out, someone who could move around backstage without raising any suspicion.
Like Margot. But she claims she was just delivering the wine, nothing more.
That's what she says. But Arthur has a theory about that. He thinks Margot was manipulated, used as a pawn. But the real mastermind, the person who orchestrated this whole thing, well, that's where things get really, really interesting.
I'm on the edge of my seat, so tell me what happens next. Does Arthur gather everyone for like a big reveal?
You bet he does. He calls everyone to the auditorium for the truth to finally come out. And you won't believe this, as he's about to unmask the killer, a huge storm breaks out.
No way. Talk about perfect timing. The theater mirroring the turmoil and tension inside.
Exactly. It's like something straight out of a play. So who does Arthur point the finger at? Well, drumroll, please. Simon Caldwell. Turns out our esteemed director was drowning in gambling debts, and Evelyn had found out about it.
So she was blackmailing him.
Bingo. She was threatening to expose his secret, which explains why he was so desperate to silence her permanently.
Wow. So it all comes down to money. But how does Arthur actually connect Simon to the crime?
Remember that torn-up blackmail letter? Arthur manages to find a tiny fragment with Simon's initials on it. Proof that Evelyn was targeting him.
Clever girl. But I bet Simon denied it, right?
Of course. He swore up and down that he was nowhere near Evelyn's dressing room.
But Arthur had already anticipated that defense. He points out that Simon didn't need to be physically present. He could have used an accomplice, someone who wouldn't even realize they were part of a murder plot.
And that's when he turns to Margot.
You got it. The unwitting accomplice, I can only imagine how she felt in that moment.
Totally devastated. You can tell she feels the weight of it all, even though she was just a pawn in Simon's game.
As the police are taking Simon away, she goes up to Arthur, completely overwhelmed with gratitude for uncovering the truth.
It's a powerful moment, you know? It reminds us that even when justice prevails, there are still casualties. And then there's Victor. His biggest rival is gone, but is that really a victory? Or will he always be haunted by the fact that someone he knew, someone he worked with, was capable of something so dark?
That's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
As everyone processes what just happened, the storm outside starts to die down. It's almost as if the theater itself is breathing a sigh of relief now that the truth has come to light.
What a beautiful image. But it also makes me wonder, was this just a storm contained within the walls of the theater? Or is it a reflection of something bigger, something about human nature?
Because let's face it, the themes of this play, betrayal, ambition, the price of fame, they go way beyond the stage.
Exactly. And in his final reflection, Arthur points out that theater has always been about holding up a mirror to society, exposing our flaws, our desires, our darkest impulses.
So as we leave the Rosewood Theater behind tonight, we're left with a lot to think about. The power of observation, the danger of secrets, the complex nature of truth. But there's one question that keeps swirling in my mind. What do you think? What does that title, Crimson Veil, really signify? Is it just about the literal veil on stage? Or is there something more to it, something metaphorical?
I think it's both, you know. It represents the masks we all wear, the facades we present to the world. It symbolizes the secrets we hide, the pain we bury, maybe even the blood that's been spilled both literally and figuratively.
And maybe it's about how those masks, those veils, can be both alluring and dangerous. They can protect us, but they can also blind us to the truth.
Such a brilliant observation. And in the end, the crimson veil is lifted, the truth comes out, but at a terrible cost. It makes us question the very nature of justice, the line between guilt and innocence.
So listeners, as you continue to process this case, we leave you with one final thought. What does the crimson veil represent to you? What masks do you wear? And what truths are you hiding? We'd love to hear your reflections. Until next time, keep those minds sharp and remember, sometimes the most captivating stories are the ones that stay with us long after the curtain falls.
So we've got this whole web of motives and opportunities all tangled up, like you said, like a Shakespearean tragedy.
Right, but Arthur's a smart guy. He knows that in a case like this, you need more than just theories. You need cold, hard evidence. And that's where things take a turn. He finds Evelyn's script.
Okay, but not just any script, right? This is her annotated script, full of notes and markings. And there's one line in particular that's underlined multiple times. It says, "The truth will be revealed tonight." It's almost spooky, isn't it?
Totally, like a premonition. But remember, Arthur's a playwright himself. He understands how lines can have different meanings, layers of subtext.
So it's not just a clue about the murder, it's a clue about Evelyn.
You're saying she knew something was going to happen.
It's possible. Right. And it seems like she wasn't just going to wait around for the truth to come out. She was going to make it happen. Which brings us to the next piece of evidence, that torn up blackmail letter Arthur finds.
Oh yeah, just fragments, but it's obvious Evelyn was threatening to expose someone's secrets, right? The only problem is the recipient's name is missing.
I wonder if that was intentional. A way to throw Arthur off the scent. Or maybe it's clue in itself. Whatever the case, it definitely paints Evelyn in a new light. She wasn't just a victim. She was playing a dangerous game.
Okay, so we've got suspects, motives, and some pretty cryptic clues. But the final piece of the puzzle, the thing that really seals the deal, is when they find the poison.
The cyanide, right. Hidden in plain sight in the prop room.
Yeah. The vial had a scratched-off label, but that almond smell, a dead giveaway.
And this is where Arthur's background as a playwright really comes into play. He looks at that hiding spot and he knows it's too perfect. It had to be someone who knew the theater like the back of their hand. Someone who could move around backstage without anyone even noticing.
So you're thinking Margot. But she insists she was just delivering the wine, nothing more.
Right. That's what she says. But Arthur has a different theory. He thinks Margot was just a pawn, someone who was manipulated, but the real mastermind behind it all. Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears. Spill it. What happens next?
Well, Arthur gathers everyone in the auditorium. It's time for the truth to come out. And get this. As he's about to reveal the killer, a huge storm breaks out.
Are you serious? That's insane. Talk about drama.
Right. It's like the theater itself is mirroring all the tension and turmoil inside. So who's the culprit? Drum roll, please. It's Simon Caldwell.
The director.
The one and only. Turns out he had a bit of a gambling problem, a lot of debt, and guess who found out?
Evelyn.
You got it. And she wasn't afraid to use that information. She was blackmailing him, threatening to expose his secret.
So that's why he did it, to protect himself.
Exactly. He was desperate. He had to silence her permanently.
Wow. But how does Arthur actually prove that Simon's the killer?
Remember that blackmail letter? Well, Arthur managed to find a tiny piece of it. And on that piece, Simon's initials.
Ooh, wait, so that's how he connects him to the crime. But I bet Simon tried to deny it all, right?
Oh, absolutely. He claimed he had nothing to do with it, that he was nowhere near Evelyn's dressing room.
But Arthur was one step ahead. He knew Simon didn't have to be physically present. He could have easily used someone else to do his dirty work. An accomplice. Someone who wouldn't suspect a thing.
So that's when he turns to Margot.
And reveals her as the unwitting accomplice.
Exactly. The poor woman, you could see the devastation on her face. She was completely heartbroken, realizing she had played a part in all of this.
I can't even imagine. So what happens next? Do the police arrest Simon?
Oh, yeah. It's quite the scene. He tries to make a run for it, but Victor and Leela, to their credit, actually help stop him.
Yeah.
Talk about a dramatic climax, right? The police arrive, sirens blaring, and that's the end of Simon's little scheme.
Wow, what a story. So the truth comes out, the killer's caught. But I have to ask, is there really any sense of justice here?
Yeah.
I mean, Margot is forever burdened by her role in this whole tragedy.
Yeah, it's a tough situation for sure. I mean, she was unknowingly a part of something truly awful.
Right, and that's something she'll have to carry with her. But, as the police are leading Simon away, Margot goes up to Arthur.
To thank him?
Yeah, she's incredibly grateful that he uncovered the truth. But at the same time, you can see the weight of everything on her shoulders.
That she's carrying the guilt even though she was just a pawn.
Exactly. It's a stark reminder that even when justice is served, there are still consequences, still people who are deeply affected. And then there's Victor, too. His biggest rival is gone. But is that really a win for him?
I doubt it. I mean, how could he not be haunted by what happened, knowing that someone he knew, worked with, was capable of such a thing? Right. It really makes you question everything. And as they're all grappling with the truth, the storm outside starts to calm down. It's almost like the theater itself is finally able to breathe again now that the secrets are out in the open.
It's a beautiful image, I have to say. But it also raises a question, was this just a storm contained within the walls of the Rosewood Theater? Or could it be a reflection of something bigger, something about human nature itself?
That's a good question. Because let's be real, the themes of Crimson Veil, the betrayals, the ambition, the dark side of fame, they resonate far beyond the stage.
Exactly. And in his final thoughts, Arthur makes this point that the theater has always been about holding up a mirror to society, right?
Yeah.
Showing us our flaws, our desires, even our darkest impulses.
Right. So as we step away from the Rosewood Theater tonight, we're left with a lot to ponder. The power of observation, the danger of keeping secrets, the complexities of truth. But there's one thing I keep coming back to. That title, Crimson Veil. It's so evocative, so layered. What do you think it really means?
I've been thinking about that too. Is it just about the literal veil on stage? Or is there a deeper metaphorical meaning?
I think it's both. On one hand, it represents the masks we all wear, the facades we present to the world. It symbolizes the secrets we hide, the pain we try to keep hidden.
And maybe even the blood that's been spilled both literally and figuratively.
Exactly. And it makes you think about how those masks, those veils, can be both luring and dangerous. They can protect us, but they can also blind us to the truth.
And ultimately, the crimson veil is lifted. The truth is revealed, but at a cost. It forces us to confront some really difficult questions about justice, guilt, and innocence.
Well said. So listeners, as you continue to process this case, we want to leave you with one final thought. What does the crimson veil represent to you? What masks do you wear? And what truths are you hiding? We'd love to hear your reflections. Until next time, stay curious and remember, sometimes the most captivating stories are the ones that stay with us long after the curtain falls.